How did a vibrant young woman with a promising future end up as the victim of one of South Africa's most shocking murder cases? This is the story of Karabo Mokoena, whose disappearance sparked a nationwide search, only to reveal a tale of deception, manipulation, and cold-blooded murder. Karabo Mokoena was just 22 years old, a beautiful and ambitious woman who had dreams of making it big. She was known for her bright smile and loving nature, but beneath that she was dealing with something much darker. She had been in a relationship with a man named Sandile Manso, a man who, on the surface, appeared to have it all together, successful, charming, and financially stable. But appearances can be deceiving, and Sandile Manso was hiding a side of him that was far more sinister. The relationship between Karabo and Sandile was marked by turbulence from the start. They had been dating for less than a year, and during that time, Karabo confided in friends about the emotional and physical abuse she suffered at Sandile's hands. Despite this, she remained in the relationship, hoping that things would improve. Friends and family later revealed that Karabo had attempted to leave Sandile multiple times, but he would manipulate her into staying, often using emotional blackmail and promises to change his ways. On the outside, Sandile Manso was the picture of success. He was a businessman, driving luxury cars and living in a high-end apartment in Sandton, one of Johannesburg's most affluent areas. But behind this facade was a man who was deeply troubled, living a double life that involved illegal activities, including drug dealing and connections with shady business dealings. These activities, unknown to Karabo, would later play a role in the unraveling of the case. On April 27, 2017, Karabo and Sandile went out together to a popular nightclub in Sandton. The evening started like any other, but it quickly took a dark turn. Witnesses at the club reported that the couple had a heated argument inside the venue, which continued outside in the parking lot. Karabo was seen in tears, visibly distressed, but despite her friends' concerns, she left with Sandile. Back at Sandile's apartment, the argument escalated. Karabo confronted Sandile about his infidelities and deceitful behavior. In a fit of rage, Sandile attacked Karabo, hitting her repeatedly before strangling her to death. The brutality of the attack was later revealed through the post-mortem examination, which showed that Karabo had suffered severe injuries before she died. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, Sandile immediately began plotting to cover up the murder. He left Karabo's lifeless body in his apartment while he drove around Johannesburg to gather materials for disposing of it. He purchased a large bin, acid, and petrol, items that would play a horrific role in his plan to hide his crime. Returning to his apartment, Sandile placed Karabo's body in the bin and then drove to a deserted area outside the city. There, in a chilling display of calculated coldness, he doused her body with acid and petrol before setting it on fire. The use of acid was a deliberate attempt to destroy evidence and make identification difficult, though this attempt ultimately failed due to the post-mortem examination and the identification of Karabo's remains. On April 28, 2017, Karabo was reported missing by her friends and family. This was completely out of character for her, and they were frantic with worry. Her family, desperate for answers, turned to social media, sharing her photos and pleading for anyone with information to come forward. The hashtag #SheFindKarabo began trending, and soon the entire country was invested in the search. As the investigation progressed, something felt off. Sandile, the last person to see Karabo alive, was acting strangely. He was distant, evasive, and seemed uninterested in helping to find her. When questioned by the police, Sandile initially claimed that they had argued that night and that Karabo had stormed off on her own. But this story didn't add up. There were too many inconsistencies, too many holes in his narrative. The police began to dig deeper into Sandile's background, uncovering his involvement in criminal activities. They found CCTV footage from the night of Karabo's disappearance, which captured Sandile carrying a large, heavy bin bag out of his apartment and loading it into the trunk of his car. This footage was the break the police needed, and Sandile was arrested shortly after. Under pressure during interrogation, Sandile's story changed. He admitted that Karabo was dead, but claimed it was an accident. alleging that she had committed suicide and that he had panicked, trying to cover it up. But the truth was far more disturbing. During the trial, the chilling details of Karabo's final moments came to light. The court heard how Sandile had not only killed Karabo, but had gone to extreme lengths to cover up the murder. Forensic evidence revealed the full extent of the brutality she had suffered, and the testimonies of friends and family painted a picture of a woman trapped in a toxic, abusive relationship. The prosecution highlighted the premeditated nature of the murder, arguing that Sandile's actions were not those of a man who panicked, but rather of someone who coldly calculated his next moves to avoid detection. They revealed that Sandile had even researched how to dispose of a body before Karabo's murder, indicating that the act was not impulsive but planned. Witnesses testified about Sandile's abusive behavior toward Karabo, describing how he would often belittle her, isolate her from her friends, and resort to violence to maintain control over her. The court heard about Karabo's numerous attempts to leave the relationship, only to be lured back by Sandile's promises to change. The emotional toll this had on Karabo was immense, and it was clear that she had been living in fear for her life. Throughout the trial, Sandile Manso showed little remorse for what he had done. He maintained his story that Karabo's death was an accident, a lie that no one believed. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and it painted a picture of a man who was not only capable of extreme violence, but also of cold, calculated deceit. In May 2018, Sandile Manso was found guilty of premeditated murder, defeating the ends of justice, and assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. He was sentenced to 32 years in prison, a sentence that many felt was too lenient for the horrific crime he had committed. But no sentence could ever bring Karabo back, and the pain of her loss was felt deeply by her family, friends, and the community. The sentence included 30 years for murder, 5 years for defeating the ends of justice, and an additional 3 years for assault, though the sentences were to run concurrently. The judge noted that Sandile's lack of remorse and the brutality of the crime warranted a harsh punishment, but for those who loved Karabo, no sentence could ever truly bring justice. Karabo's murder had a profound impact on South Africa, particularly in highlighting the issue of gender-based violence. Her story became a symbol of the dangers many women face in abusive relationships and the urgent need for societal change. Her death sparked protests and campaigns across the country, with activists calling for stronger laws and better protection for victims of domestic abuse. The case also brought attention to the failures in the system, where despite Karabo's friends and family being aware of the abuse, no intervention occurred that could have potentially saved her life. It was a stark reminder of the importance of taking signs of abuse seriously and the need for greater support systems for those in toxic relationships. The hashtag #DurFindKarabo evolved into #Justice for Karabo, a rallying cry for justice not just for Karabo, but for all victims of gender-based violence. Her story resonated with many, particularly women who had experienced similar forms of abuse, and it sparked a national conversation about the dangers of staying in toxic relationships. Beyond the headlines and the hashtags, Karabo Mokoena was a real person with hopes, dreams, and a life that was tragically cut short. She was more than just a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships and the devastating consequences they can have. In the years following her death, Karabo's name has continued to be associated with the fight against gender-based violence. Her family, despite their immense grief, has worked tirelessly to honor her memory by advocating for stronger protections for women and by supporting other families who have suffered similar tragedies. Karabo's life may have been taken, but her legacy lives on, inspiring others to fight for justice and to speak out against the violence that continues to plague so many lives. The murder of Karabo Mokoena is a dark chapter in South Africa's history, but it's also a story of resilience, of a community coming together to demand justice, and of the enduring fight to protect those who are most vulnerable. The story of Karabo Mokoena is not just a story of murder. It's a story of love gone wrong, of deception and betrayal, and of the shocking lengths one person will go to cover up their crimes. It's a story that leaves us asking, how could this happen? And reminds us of the importance of speaking out against violence in all its forms.